So this blog is going to go into about domestic violence, and I'm going to share some experiences. A house where a woman is not unsafe is not a home, and that's the truth. You do not sleep right. You do not think right. You cannot function for very long around people that are treat you like this. It's just there's no getting around it. And I was always kind of one of those people always waiting for the next shoe to drop. You have to tiptoe around things. You don't, people playing favorites and sides and, like pitting the kids together and then things like that. And then we're going to go into more details because I'm going to just keep going. I'm a little tired of this. And this is some of the clues that you can tell when it's getting to the point of domestic violence. Now, with my sister and I, there's always been, she gets really verbal. So you can't ever ask her a question without her jumping the gun. And, it just gets to be out of hand. And then, one time you say one thing just because it always escalates to more. But that doesn't make an excuse for, lashing out at each other. But these are the kind of things I run into using children, threats, male privilege, sexual abuse. All of it. Isolation, intimidation. And of course, if you have a disability, it's even more common because they can make excuses. Oh, she's, depressed or that. This is what you hear all the time. And then go back to that wheel, like using privilege, raising your fist to somebody, hot temper. No one ever has to be this way. They just are. They don't want to help. They don't want to change. They like making everyone that is weaker than them feel insignificant. And, every person has, purpose. And I don't think there's one thing that I don't like even more is when I have to sit there and watch people get a sick thrill out of it. And I hear people say they don't want to apologize. They have no desire to. They don't want to change. They don't want to do anything. And you know what happens is they think that because they can do it to one person and that somehow this is how they recruit friends. And I'm going to tell you guys, I'm a little sick and tired of people making excuses for even grabbing somebody. And then I've been on both ends of this because I realize, as a victim or survivor, I know what to look for from time to time, but you don't know when it's going to happen. It's like being ambushed, like I was tonight. I was ambushed, and I probably should have maybe called and things like that. It's getting to the point where you don't have to do any of those things. You shouldn't have to worry about going into somebody's home and them grabbing you and then humiliating you and lunging at you and pointing their finger in your face. The ultimate form of disrespect is going and pointing in somebody's face like you're a hot shot. And I work around people like this. I've been around a lot of people too. And one of the things about keeping your hands yourself or getting into somebody's face, I see these women, they're stronger, bigger women, and they'll point their finger into people's face and they'll get all nasty. And I look at girls that go to jail, and this is the kind of behavior you see in a jail cell in a penitentiary. These women get all in your face, they start arguing with everybody, and then they go pouting off like they feel better. I don't know why anyone feels better about getting in anybody's face. It doesn't feel right, I don't know what kind of strange pleasure anyone gets out of humiliating, insulting somebody, and making fun of them, and making stupid jokes, and at the cost of somebody else. And I'm a very, very empathetic person. So when I see somebody in a weak moment, my initial feeling is to want to defend them and protect them, And I'm like the kind of person that, I sit there and watch people and all their personality problems. And I just am a little sick of people using and abusing people this way. It's one of my biggest Achilles heels. I'm just going to go on for a while. Just let me go for a little bit. I'm going to tell you, I talked to a police officer tonight, and, believe it or not, these are some facts that people need to know. There's no big secret here. But, the officer was asking me tonight, he was saying, well, what would make anyone want to grab anybody? I said, I'd like to know that too. And I said, you're an officer. If somebody touches a police officer, what is that? That's called simple assault. You're not allowed to grab a police officer. I said, I don't look at any different. if you were to grab a police officer, you're going to get charged with simple assault. Okay, you're not allowed to touch them. I don't, you hear me? You're not, it's no different. No one should ever lay a hand on anyone, ever. There's no reason to. If somebody wants to fight and argue, I mean, you can get in each other's face. I'm not the kind of person that gets in anyone's face. And I see how these girls, young girls, this is a way of life. And then they'll say, well, I'm a mom. No, there's no reason to ever get in anybody's face. You realize how tacky and how low class people are when they're sitting there, pointing into your face and, lunging at you and then, ambushing 2-on-1. This is so ridiculous. We're going to go on for a while, okay? Some of you have ever lived through something like that or, share some experiences. I mean, I could think of numerous experiences how some people pick fights. It's like they're waiting for them to mess up. They're waiting for them to screw up. So I told you so. This is how immature and sickening this behavior is. This is the kind of behavior that goes on in homes. It's sibling rivalry. It's picking fights. And sometimes I wish a lot of times I was like really irritated and angry. And sometimes I just get mad about stupid things. But you know what? What's really hard is that the stupid stuff, when you realize like, this is so dumb. This is so ridiculous. I don't even know why I was like that. And you think it through and you just let it go. No, that's not how it really is. Okay. I'm not letting this issue go. I'm not going to let this go anymore. I have watched people all my life cross the line, push the envelope, push it. And see, the thing is, it's out of my control. I can't control the fact that some people behave this way and they make justification. This is my home and I'm allowed to do whatever I want. No, it might be your home, but you're not allowed to grab and hit and punch people. And I've seen people get aggressive and harsh and difficult. And listen, it's a lot to have to be assertive and say these things, okay? It's a lot for me to just come out there and say these things. But I'm going to tell you over and over again, people who back away and are timid, crouch in a corner doesn't get anybody anywhere. I found out you box it out and you fight back. But the way the laws are, that if you're backed in a corner and the police officers don't think that this is a different scenario, I can think of so many different scenarios and I can see so many different players in my life and people who are defenseless, have no way to argue. You can't, how hard is it that you go into somebody's home and that there's two people on literally attacking you one siding with the other and it just never works out. I've heard of everything that you're crazy, you need therapy and help, and it goes right back to this is the way they get away with it because they tell everybody, well, that's why I did it. Do you know how many little mean jokes these jerk-offs have played? Everything from doing these little shady things behind your back, and you know why we talk about it? You know why? Because you know what? They're getting caught, and they're getting caught into their own stupid jokes. They go out of their way to be mean. They go out of the way to be attacked dogs. I mean, you'd think that some of the people we deal with, they would live in a cage and they could just like unleash on anybody. And I'm going to tell you, this is why the lack of discipline. And believe me, I don't necessarily mean that they're just like attack dogs. They're just waiting. They're waiting for an opportunity to lunge back. And this is kind of animalistic behavior. I was sitting there listening to my sister how she was saying, well, I'm a mother. That doesn't give you the right to threaten and attack somebody. It doesn't give you the right to do that. And that's what I mean. It's like letting the cage loose. I'm going to tell you, we live in a world where everybody out there that has either dealt with it or been around people that are just wrathful, it's like they can't feel good unless they're, making people feel bad and then attacking people just for asking a question. I mean, this is the kind of stuff I've lived around. I mean, I got to the point where we're going to just talk about it because you know what? They're going to be found out and we're going to keep talking about it. You work with somebody like this, you have to live with somebody property like that. You can't go to sleep. You can't be, you're not welcome there. You're not this. Then they push you out the door, and then you make you feel bad. I mean, this is on and on. And they say, well, it's always the same people. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. You know what? This is everyone. They target people like that. They call it TI. They target people like this all the time. They target somebody, they have their target on somebody, and they're going to take all their frustrations out, and then they're going to say, oh, well, that person has medical problems. You know what? That's exactly why abuse is so bad, because they purposely isolate them. They purposely make them the target. And then everybody can group up and they can gang up, and this is like freaking gang stalking. It is really messed up how many families do this to their own family members. And you know what? I can only wish more people would talk about it. But when I talk about gang stalking and ganging up and recruiting friends to pick on somebody, mean little jokes, little things like playing nasty jokes, making fun of them, this is the kind of stuff that I if you don't correct it, if you don't correct your kids and discipline them, it's like, I don't want you ever talking to people like this. I don't want you to show that kind of disrespect. And I have to tell you, after all the things I've ever lived through or grew up or been around, one of the things I always liked about people who learn from their own actions is I know that this is not how I want to live my life. I know that I don't want to be around people who are predators or have, this is their form of entertainment. And and to not feel bad, that's even worse. I've seen this over and over in people's homes. I've seen this over and over in my home. I've seen this over and over at work, where they have a target and they'll just fixate their problems on that person. And we call that projecting. You know why we call it projecting? Because that problem isn't something that person caused. It's just once these people, they hone their eyes in on the person they want to fixate all their problems on and blame on, and never take any responsibility for their actions or words. You know what I mean? And the thing, people are always provoked. I'm not sitting there arguing whether people shouldn't be fight back either, because I'm going to tell you, over a period of time, you sit there and tolerate. I've heard everything. Well, you made me do this. You made me, and it goes back. It's always somebody else's fault. It's never your actions. It's never your words. It's never your behavior. And then they try to team up with people, compare notes. And that's the sick part of this whole thing with abuse. It has gone on all my life. I've watched people raise their fists at my own mother. I've seen people raise their fists at me. I've seen it all my life. And the thing is that you sit there and you get pushed around, you get kicked around, you get hit, you get smacked. What are you supposed to do? Sit there and wait for the next time, then the next time, and the next time. So after I talked to the police officer, I said, so what happens next time? What happens next time? I mean, we have to interact with these people. What happens next time? This is on and on and on, and it's a behavior, and it's a cycle of abuse, because they find ways to make you feel bad. They isolate you. They kick you out. They push you out. They're abusive, and they're not even sorry. That's what the worst part is, that they feel they're so justified that they're allowed to do this. They're allowed to do this, and then finally, when somebody starts saying enough's enough, they draw the line, as if I was talking to the police officer, and I said, I don't know, but this is why they call it abuse, because it's a misuse of something or someone. Over time, you can misuse your authority and power over somebody, and eventually it turns back on them. And let's hope so. I am so angered by what abuse does to people. I'm angry that anyone would ever lash out, hit somebody, smack, gang up on them, attack them. It really is the most embarrassing thing to watch, is somebody use their authority or power over somebody, order people around like they're nothing. And I have watched people who live this way. They spend their whole lives making excuses for their behavior. I had to sit there, and it was painful, believe me, to listen to somebody say, well, I was abused as a child. That should never be a reason to go ahead and hurt somebody or hit somebody. And I had to say, and I admit, it is very painful to listen to somebody, project their childhood childhood trauma and abuse on them. I know a lot of people have been through a lot in their life, and they don't make excuses for hitting. They don't make excuses for things. They go to counseling. They do whatever they have to do. And I sit there and listen to this on and on and on. It's like, I was abused as a child. So that does not mean that anyone should ever lash out at somebody. There's no reason. There's no reason to get to that point, get that angry to hurt somebody. I simply think that's cold. And how I know this is because, one of the things I learned from past mistakes and knowing that this never gets better. Unless it's something that is diffused or dealt with. I went and said some things, and I realized, I was like, I should have never got verbal with that person. And I recognize that whenever I say things, I realize right away I should not have said that. The problem is some people use it to manipulate people. And I'm going to tell you, one of the things I learned over my lifetime is that I have a sonar, and I'm pretty good about picking up on somebody's bad behavior. Because the thing is, it's one thing to be mad and argue and say bad things. That's not even a good reason either. But the thing is that there's some people that they take it too far. They'll use it, and they'll keep it over somebody's head. And that is the kind of crap that I cannot stand. It's one thing to be sorry. It's another thing to use it over somebody's head. And one of the things I learned something, and you're never too old to learn, is that, like, you bring up the past or you argue with somebody, especially somebody that's not willing to ever deal with anything. They live in denial. They make excuses, and they say, oh, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to talk about that. They never want to talk about anything. They wait till things finally escalate, and then it blows up. And this is why I think people who want to communicate and want to do things and want to change their lives, they're going to be willing to listen. They're going to be willing to work it out. They're going to be willing to hear both sides of the story. And what ends up happening is it's the same people. It's like they gather they recruit all their people, and they say, oh, I told you so. This person does that all the time. And that's the kind of problem we always run into. That's why we call it the cycle abuse, because there's always a bunch of new players are all taking position, and we're back at it again. That's why I'm discussing it now, to break the cycle. Thank you for listening.